It was the beginning of August '93 when I first left England for the coast. Preparations of quinine with postage partially paid arrived up to the last moment, and a friend hastily sent 2 newspaper clippings, one entitled "A Week in a Palm Oil Tub," which was supposed to describe the sort of accommodation, companions, and fauna likely to be met with on a steamer going to West Africa, and on which I was to spend 7 to the graphic contributors 1. The other from the Daily Telegraph reviewing a French book of phrases in common use in Dahomey. The opening sentence in the latter was, "Help! I am drowning." Then came the inquiry, "If a man is not a thief?" And then another cry, "The boat is upset!" "Get up, you lazy scamps," is the next exclamation, followed by almost immediately by the question, "Why has not this man been buried? Is it fetish that has killed him, and he must lie here exposed with nothing on him until only the bones remain?" is the cheerful answer. This sounded discouraging to a person whose occupation would necessitate going about considerably in boats, and whose fixed desire was to study fetish. So, with a feeling of foreboding gloom, I left London for Liverpool, none the more cheerful for the matter-of-fact manner in which the steamboat agents had informed me that they did not issue return tickets by the West African lines of steamers. I will not go into detail of that voyage here, much as I am given to discursiveness. They are more amusing than instructive, for on my first voyage out I did not know the coast, and the coast did not know me, and we mutually terrified each other. I fully expected to get killed by the local nobility and gentry. They thought I was connected with the world's Women's Temperance Association, and collecting shocking details for subsequent magic lantern lectures on the liquor traffic. So fearful misunderstandings arose, but we gradually educated each other, and I had the best of the affair, for all I had got to teach them was that I was only a beetle and fetish hunter, and so forth, while they had to teach me a new world, and a very fascinating course of study I found it. Whatever the coast may have to say against me, for my continual desire for hairpins and the other pins, my intolerable habit of getting into water, the abominations full of ants that I brought into their houses, or things emitting at unexpectedly short notice vivid and awful stenches, they cannot but say that I was a diligent pupil, who honestly tried to learn the lessons they taught me so kindly, though some of those lessons were hard to a person who had never previously ever been even in a tame bit of tropics, and whose life for many years had been an entirely domestic one in a university town. One by one, I took my old ideas derived from books and thoughts based on imperfect knowledge, and weighed them against the real life around me, and found them either worthless or wanting. The greatest recantation I had to make, I made humbly before I had been 3 months on the coast in 1893. It was of my idea of the traders. What I had expected to find them was a very different thing to what I did find them. And of their kindness to me I can never sufficiently speak, for on that voyage I was utterly out of touch with the government circles, and utterly dependent on the traders, and the most useful lessons of all lessons I learned on the West Coast in 1893 was that I could trust them. Had I not learnt this very thoroughly, I could have never gone out again and carried out the voyage I give you a sketch of in this book. Thanks to the agent, I have visited places I could never otherwise have seen, and to the respect and affection in which he is held by the native, I owe it that I have done so in safety. When I have arrived off his factory in a steamer or canoe unexpected, unintroduced, or turned up equally unheralded out of the bush in a dilapidated state, he has always received me with that gracious hospitality which must have given him, under coast conditions, very real trouble and inconvenience, things he could have so readily found logical excuses against entailing upon himself for the sake of an individual whom he had never seen before, whom he would most likely never see again, and whom it was no earthly profit to him to see then. He has bestowed himself, Allah knows only where, on his small trading vessel, so that I might have his one cabin. He has fished me out of the sea and fresh water with boat hooks. He has continually given me good advice, which, if I had only followed, would have enabled me to keep out of water and any other sort of affliction. And although he holds the meanest opinion of my intellect for going to such a place as West Africa for beetles, fishes, and fetish, he has given me the greatest assistance in my work. The value of that work I pray you withhold judgment on until I lay it before you in some 10 volumes or so, mostly in Latin. All I know that is true regarding West Africa facts, I owe to the traders. The errors are my own. To Dr. Gunter of the British Museum, I am deeply grateful for the kindness and interest he has always shown regarding all the specimens of natural history that I have been able to lay before him, the majority of which must have had very old tales to tell him. Yet his courtesy and attention gave me the thing a worker in any work most wants, a sense that the work was worth doing, and sent me back to work again with a knowledge that if these things interested a man like him, it was more than sufficient reason for me to go on collecting them. To Mr. W. H. F. Kirby, I am much indebted for his working out my small collection of certain orders of insects, and to Mr. Thomas S. Forshaw for the great help he has afforded me in revising my notes. It is impossible for me even to catalogue my debts of gratitude still outstanding to the West Coast. Chiefly I am indebted to Mr. C. G. Hudson, whose kindness and influence enabled me to go up the Ogwe and to see as much of the Congo Francais as I have seen, and his efforts to take care of me were most ably seconded by Mr. Fields. The French officials in Congo Francais never hindered me and always treated me with the greatest kindness. You may say there was no reason why they should not, for there is nothing in this fine colony of France that they need to be ashamed of anyone seeing. But I find it is customary for travelers to say the French officials throw obstacles in the way of anyone visiting their possessions. So I merely beg to state this was decidedly not my experience, although my deplorable ignorance of French prevented me from explaining my humble intentions to them. The Reverend Dr. Nassau and Mr. R. E. Dennett have enabled me, by placing at my disposal the rich funds of their knowledge of native life and idea, to amplify any deductions from my own observations. Mr. Dennett's work I have not dealt with in this work because it refers to to tribes I was not amongst on this journey, but to a tribe I made the acquaintance with in my '93 voyage, the Fjord. Dr. Nassau's observations I have referred to. Herr von Luc, Vice-Governor of Cameroon, I am indebted to for not only allowing me, but for insisting me by every means in his power to go up Cameroon's Peak, and to the government of Cameroon, Governor of Cameroon, Herr von Puttkamer, for his assistance, help, and kindness. Indeed, so great has been the willingness to help me of all these gentlemen, that it is a wonder to me, when I think of it, that their efforts did not project me right across the continent and out at Zanzibar. That this brilliant affair did not come off is owing to my own lack of enterprise, for I did not want to go across the continent, and I do not hanker after Zanzibar, but only to go puddling about obscure districts in West Africa after raw fetish and freshwater fishes. I owe my ability to have profited by the kindness of these gentlemen on land to a gentleman of the sea, Captain Murray. He was the captain of the vessel I went out on in 1893, and he saw then that my mind was full of errors that must be eradicated if I was going to deal with the coast successfully. And so he eradicated those errors and replaced them with sound knowledge from his own stores collected during an acquaintance with the West Coast of over 30 years. The education he has given me has been of the greatest value to me, and I sincerely hope to make many more voyages under him, for I well know he is still much to teach and I to learn. Last but not least, I must chronicle my debts to the ladies. First to those two courteous Portuguese ladies, Dona Ana de Sousa Cojito e Chicoro, and her sister, Dona Maria de Sousa Contillo, who did so much for me in Kakonga in 1893 and have remained, I am proud to say, my firm friends ever since. Lady MacDonald and Miss Mary Seltzer I speak of in this book, but only faintly sketch the pleasure and help they have afforded me, nor have I fully expressed my gratitude for the kindness of Madame Jacquot of Lambere, or Madame Forgot of Taluga. Then there are a whole list of nuns belonging to the Roman Catholic missions on the southwest coast, every cheery and charming companion, and Frau Plen, whom it was a continual pleasure to see in Cameroons, and discourse with once again on things that seemed so far off then, art, science, and literature, and Mrs. H. Duggan of Cameroons too, who used, whenever I came into that port, to rescue me from fearful states of starvation for toilet necessities, and lend a sympathetic and intelligent ear to the awful sufferings I had gone through, until Cameroon became a thing to me to look forward to. When in the Canaries in 1892, I used to smile, I regretfully own, at the conversation of a gentleman from the Gold Coast who was up there recruiting after a bad fever. His conversation consisted largely of anecdotes of friends of his, and 9 times in 10 he used to say, "He's dead now." Alas, my own conversation may be smiled at now for the same cause. Many of my friends mentioned even in this very recent account of the coast are dead now. Most of those I learned to know in 1893. Chief among them is my old friend Captain Bowler of Bonny, from whom I first learnt a certain power of comprehending the African and his form of thought. I have great reason to be grateful to the Africans themselves, to cultured men and women among them like Charles Awu, Mimbo, Sanga Glass, Jane Harrington, and her sister at Gaboon, and to the bush natives, but of my experience with them I give further details, so I need not dwell on them here. I apologize to the general reader for giving so much details on matters that really only affect myself, and I know that the indebtedness with which all African travelers have to the white residents in Africa is a matter usually very lightly touched on. No doubt my voyage would seem a grander thing if I omitted mention of the help I received, but, well, there was a German gentleman once who evolved a camel out of his inner consciousness. It was a wonderful thing still, you know. It was not a good camel, only a thing which people personally unacquainted with camels could believe in. Now I am ambitious to make a picture, if I make one at all, that people who do know the original can believe in, even if they criticize its points. And so I give you details. I give you details a more showy artist would omit.